Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Chadwick Stokes of the band Dispatch performs live at Rams Head in Annapolis, Maryland on Wednesday. He joined me to break down his Dispatch songs from Out Loud to The General, as well as his other projects like State Radio and even his plans for a new rock opera. Hey, Chadwick Stokes. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP in DC.
Hey, my pleasure. Good to be here.
Now, we're talking because you are coming to Rams Head, Annapolis on March 8th. A lot of our listeners will know your stuff from Dispatch and State Radio and other things. But we're billing this one as Chadwick Stokes and the Pintos, which I know is like a solo name of your album. So I guess my main question is this Rams Head Annapolis show, is there going to be any Dispatch, or is it mostly solo stuff, or a little of both?
Well, it's going to be, there's usually a couple State Radio tunes, a couple Dispatch tunes, and then the rest are from the solo repertoire. I've just started working on a rock opera, so we may play a chunk of like 3 new songs in a row because they're kind of telling a story.
All right, you got to tell me about this rock opera. Is there a name for it yet? Is there a storyline for it yet, or are you just kind of trying it out for now?
There's a storyline. This is the first time ever like really talking about it to anyone else except my family or and my bandmates. But
you can break some news with us. That's fine.
Breaking news. I've been wanting to do this since I started playing music. So there was always other things happening. And so I'm just getting to a point where I've been able to cull over the songs, like the sketches of songs from the past few years, and try to line them up and see what's happening kind of musically. And I think the rock opera is going to be set in the early 70s, perhaps.
Okay.
So that's one way for me to go back to listen to songs that might particularly have that vibe. And now I'm at a stage with some of them where I just need to know what part of the story are they furthering.
Sure.
And so it's a lot of kind of lyrical jockeying to try to make sure. Sometimes when you're just writing a song unto itself, you can get away with a little cloudiness. But I'm sure there'll still be plenty of that in this. But it's essentially, my brother and I, who plays in the Pintos, we've done some riding of the rails, some freight train jumping, and that's where a lot of this rock opera takes place.
I love it. Wait, so what do you mean by freight train jumping? Like, is it actually set along train tracks, or I'm just trying to pull some out of you, even though it's not written yet? But
right. It's set. It's that lifestyle kind of attracts a fringe and beautiful element of our society and our humanness, and it's people, it's of all ages and kinds coming to like kind of running from something, because it's usually, if you're out there, the conditions are kind of harsh enough, and that it's not something you choose to do, for a long length of time at least.
Yeah.
And so it's these people coming together who are kind of running from their own lives. And, at first they don't get along, but hopefully they do at some point, and that kind of thing.
I love it. I love it. I'm geeking out just talking about the creation of it, because I can tell it's still sort of formulating, but that's the exciting part. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I hope I hope that for these audiences in the next, one of the reasons for doing this little tour, this week-long thing, is it gives me discipline and kind of kicks me in the ass to get these. It gives me a real deadline, as opposed to like I can't get all these songs together, but maybe I can get these 3 or these 5 together, and to try them out in front of people, and to see if because ultimately they really have to hold together just as songs too, so if even if the story is good, if the song is shit, then it's not going to carry it. So the songs have to be good enough unto themselves. And so part of this will be playing them in front of an audience for the first time. And then, maybe sometimes it's back to the drawing board, and sometimes it's like, all right, this is working, and that kind of thing.
Right. You mentioned, I mean, I want to know, what are like your rock opera touchstones? You mentioned you were going back to listen to like 70s stuff. Like, I think, I know, Jesus Christ Superstar. I don't know. Like,
yes.
what are your rock opera influences, I guess?
Yes. I mean, The Wall and Tommy are big, but definitely Jesus Christ Superstar, maybe the most, and Hair.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ Superstar and Hair are, I grew up with as a kid, and before I kind of graduated to the Who and Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And so they have a special place in my heart. They're also very different in that Jesus Christ Superstar, it tells an ancient story that people kind of know, so they don't have to really lay it out. But that story does that lyrically, it does tell the story from start to finish without any real dialogue.
Right.
Whereas Hair is more like these vignettes,
sure.
And kind of loosely a loose thread throughout it.
So will yours be more of a loose thread, vignettes, or are you still figuring it out? Will this be sung through the whole way?
Yeah, I'd try to have it sung through the whole way, so it's like a more of a proper opera. But right. There may be holes that I have to fill in somehow. So, but I like the idea of like no speaking, just the whole thing's music.
Sure. I love it. Thank you so much for telling us what's the buzz. Tell me what's happening. What's the buzz? All right. Anyway, it's the best I got. Hey, I didn't know we were going to be talking about any of this. So there is a show coming to Annapolis apparently, but what, in addition to these rock opera, teaser songs that you're working out, can you draw, and don't spoil the whole set list, obviously, but is there, what dispatch songs or state radio songs might we hear? Can tease a song or two that we might hear?
Yeah. We usually play Calling All Crows, which is this state radio song. Keepsake 2 is kind of an acoustic-y state radio song. And then Dispatch might be something like, it's kind of fun because my brother plays the banjo, so it's fun to play songs like Flying Horses or something with the banjo, because it kind of lends itself to that. But there's also a song off the relatively new Dispatch record called Born on Earth, which carries over really nicely to the Pintos, and maybe Letter to Lady J thrown in there.
All right, that gives us a sense. That's a good enough of a teaser. You got to come out to the dang show if you want to hear what everything is going to be. Well, thank you. I mean, whenever I have someone like yourself on, I always love to hear sort of you're sort of how you got into it to begin with. And you kind of mentioned the rock opera stuff as a kid, but what about like, non-rock opera? Like what music were you into? I guess you were born in Massachusetts in 76, but like what all did you sort of to grow up listening to, music wise?
A lot of Creedence.
CCR, baby.
Yeah. And then a lot of Creedence and Beatles and Dylan, kind of that classic upbringing, and Hendrix. And then when I was in high school, that it was kind of incredible timing for Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Rage Against the Machine. So it's like it was a beautiful age to witness kind of this new feeling. It was like I think we because I grew up on a small farm in a very small town, and so I don't think we didn't connect so much, and I was so young in the 80s that the things we connected to were kind of music before us. And then to be a sophomore in high school and have everything to land, right with us with Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and that was something else. Blind Melon, Soundgarden. It was just an amazing time to feel like we had a music of our own. And I also played the trombone all through as a kid, so also leaned towards like the reggae sounds of the horns and reggae and ska. And so I kind of had that. And Boston was a good ska scene, so there was an element to that as well.
kind of perfect timing, like you're saying, because you were doing when you were young and, figuring out everything as a kid, your early exposure, you got the CCRs and all of that stuff. But then you came of age right as music was changing with Nirvana and the grunt and Soundgarden. So it's kind of lucky you were good timing on that. Was there ever any Simon and Garfunkel back there too?
Yes.
Some of your songs have a little echoes of that, I think.
Absolutely. We were actually, when I remember being a kid and not know and putting it together that Paul Simon was the same guy as Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah, because it's funny as a kid and even as listeners, sometimes we don't put it all together. But live at Central Park. The first time they did that was a huge record in our house. We lived with our aunt and uncle too, and our parents, but my aunt and uncle were younger than my parents, so they really caught like the hippie generation perfectly. So all the music was down in the cottage on the farm. Nice. And so like that's where we first listened to the Who records, and that's where there was Simon Garfunkel was huge there. And then I guess in the 80s when Graceland came out, that really that was such an incredible record, and I think had lasting effects.
I love it. All right, so how does Dispatch form off the tail of that? I guess what's like mid 90s, 96. So you said in your sophomore year of high school, you're starting to discover all these cool, edgy bands. So then how does Dispatch come together? And you probably told the story millions of times. So, but a condensed version of how you guys formed.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense because I joined Pete's band as a with my trombone. And then I said, I play guitar and write songs too. And that's cool. And we started doing it together. We called ourselves Hermit Thrush. Which is the
Hermit Thrush.
Yeah, which is maybe the greatest band name I've ever been a part of.
Not Herman's Hermits. Hermit's
right. Hermit Thrush. It's the state bird of Vermont.
Okay.
Pete came up with that name, and I loved it. And it was Pete and I as kind of the front men, and then and a band rounding us out, and it was great. And then Pete had a side thing with Brad where they did more acoustic things. And then so everything kind of collided, and then Pete, Brad, and I switched over to we kind of electrified the Pete and Brad thing and added me to it, and so there became the trio.
And that was Silent Steeples, the first one. Then I guess.
Yeah, it was largely acoustic, and the longer we played together, the more electric we got because we were kind of learning. We were kind of like Brad was essentially learning to play the drums, so that first record is very, kind of sparse with him on the drums, and then it kind of carries on from there.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, I have to ask you about that second album, Bang Bang in 97. I love that. My wife is a huge fan of that too, by the way. Shout out from the wife. Big fan of Dispatch. Tell me about the General. Everyone knows that line, take a shower and shine your shoes, but tell me about sort of more the meaning behind that. I've seen the others and I've discovered this fight's not worth fighting. I mean, you've gone into some political stuff and the stuff you've done since, but just kind of talk about, what were you going for with that song? Sort of like an anti-war message of we're all together kind of a thing.
Yeah. I was always like many, kind of fascinated by war and this idea of the draft and these young men and women going to do the bidding of some person's decision who's like in their safe mansion or White House.
Who does not have to fight, and most times aren't even sending their kids to fight.
Right. So but I think it's always about humanizing war, and that how absurd it is to be shooting at or trying to kill someone you don't know and don't met is just doing the same thing you're doing, just following orders, for country or whatever. It's I think ideologically the World War II and there were some it's easy, some wars are easier to try to avoid than others,
right?
But in general, no pun intended, the idea that war is just pain and suffering, and it's a it's too often not the last resort. And so I think it's just, it just seemed to me and many others and other pacifists, that if we just understood each other more, could walk in other people's shoes, that we would realize that, oh, this is why you thought that, or this, and it's all about communication and that kind of thing. And this, um, on the other, one side you have diplomacy and kind of trying to listen, and on the other side you have just total carnage and centuries of animosity and revenge, and it's just like, so I think that's where that comes from. Just trying to be like, if that the general in his dream he could see the people he was fighting, and he could see their mothers, and therein lies, hopeful understanding.
Absolutely. There is really no the idea there really is no other. And once we realize that, I mean, you said it perfectly. I have nothing really to add, but war is mankind's worst addiction. I've been thinking about that a lot. That new All Quiet on the Western Front remake. Similar themes. Anyway, but also something completely different on that album. Tell me real quick about recording Out Loud. If you call my name out loud, that's like something completely different, but so beautiful. Who came up with that? Where were you when you wrote that? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was in Zimbabwe when I wrote it, actually, and right after high school, I took a gap year, and I was thinking about a girl I had a crush on, how, many miles, thousands of miles away, and had a lot of time in Zimbabwe too, to kind of wander around with my guitar and play and write a lot. And that song just came out of that time. And I think in recording it, we recorded it Brad had a senior concert at Middlebury. So a few years later, like 2 years later, he was graduating, and I was a freshman or first bit of sophomore year. And Brad asked Pete and I to be part of his senior, I don't know, thesis or senior senior thing. And so we played that song and we recorded it, and that was what we just threw on Bang Bang. So there's a live feel to it, I suppose. But we play it so differently. If you listen to live records, we play it fully electric and much more in a reggae vein.
I love it. Well, I mean, it's a beautiful song, and we'd be here all day if we talked about all your albums. So I won't subject you to that. Don't. But I do want to know if we can fast forward to one more album, America Location 12. I love that one. Only the Wild One, Skin the Rabbit, Painted Yellow Lines. It's a great album. How did that come together? But actually, first of all, what is the Location 12? I've always wondered. America Location 12.
That was we were recording that up in Stinson Beach, so just north of San Francisco, and there was a like missile silo that we discovered, or people know about them. It's not that hard to find, but really, like, almost as if the whole thing, there was these giant missiles, and then they covered them with dirt, but it's right on the water. And there's these these hills that you think they're regular hills, but then you see a big iron door, and then you can kind of walk in some of them. And on the inside of one of those was written Location 12. So that's where that whole thing got started, and that whole album was like kind of like our for Brad, Pete and I, was like kind of our comeback. We hadn't recorded a record in a while, and
right, there was like a break right before that, right? Like a hiatus kind of.
And then we decided to come back together, and then we all went our separate ways to kind of work and write, and my aunt and uncle had moved out of the cottage that we spoke of earlier and moved up to Vermont. And so I spent most of my many days in that cottage recording and writing that record. And so that ended in eventually recording it out in Stinson Beach.
Awesome. Thanks for those tidbits. Wow. The missile silo. We keep coming back. There's a theme here, through line. All this war, fighting against war, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot of your, before we run, we have to hit state radio. I know you've done, that's sort of, I guess, a lot of some of the more political songwriting and stuff too. And you mentioned being influenced by Rage when you were growing up, and now you've toured with them. And I know Dave Matthews and other stuff with state radio. But how rewarding is it to have that sort of outlet to not only do the dispatch stuff, not only do the solo stuff, but state radio? Do you view that as like, when I'm going to do a political record, I'm going to do it with them now? Or do you not? I guess you don't even really view it like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they definitely have those thoughts when there's a big election year coming up, or just the shit was so crazy with Trump. He's such a buffoon. So it's like, what can we do? And then I definitely lean, I'm like, okay, enough of this other stuff. Like, let's get to it.
It's state radio time.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way. But I also listen to like the songs and stuff, and do I have a batch of songs for a new state radio record, and that's when I have to be like, well, I can either do that or the rock opera, so there is a bit of juggling going on, but it's also like what the songs are telling me.
Absolutely. And you said that of the state radio songs, you might be playing Calling All Crows. You said that might be the one year.
Yeah. I mean, the other day I did a solo show, which gives me a little bit more freedom. And I played Camilo and Mr. Larkin, some songs that don't see the light of day as much. So those are there's some stuff in the wings, I guess, if we feel like we need them.
Awesome. Well, you can hear all of these songs and more at the Ram's Head in Annapolis on March 8th. I mean, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to see that rock opera now. Is there a title for it yet? Or is there a working title or no?
No, not yet. I mean, I toyed with the idea of some like American refugee or something like that. Like, right. Like kind of a refugee from this country.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
There's something to that. I like that. Keep going down that train track.
Okay.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Nice to see you.
All right. Be well.
You too.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.